Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to continue on with our journey through the Criterion Collection release from 2020 of this set, which is the complete films of Agnes Varda. And today, if you don't mind, I'd like to focus our attention on the disc which is known as Program 6, and the title given to it is In California. This Program 6 Blu-ray disc in this set of the complete films of Agnes Varda from the Criterion Collection is given the title In California, which is an apt one because the films all deal in one form or another with Agnes Varda's time in California. And the films are UNCLE YANCO and Black Panthers and Lions, Love and Lies and MUR MURS and DOCUMENTEUR. So these films, these 5 films, are ones that in fact we saw collected in an earlier Criterion release, which is right here, the Eclipse Series number 43, Agnes Varda in California, the DVD Eclipse Series set with all 5 of these films. And so we have here the presentation of these films on this new Blu-ray set, but the collection, the gathering of these films is the same. There are some slight differences in terms of the year descriptions. For example, the Eclipse series describes UNCLE YANCO as 1967, whereas the Blu-ray set describes it as 1968. Black Panthers here is described as 1968, whereas the Blu-ray set describes it as 1970. And Lions, Love and Lies, in both sets described as 1969. MUR MURS described here as 1980, whereas in the set it's described as 1981, whereas Documentaire is described both in the Eclipse set and in the Blu-ray set as a film from 1981. So with that, we have, as I say, this new presentation, this new Blu-ray set, and we have also collected on this Program 6 disc some supplements, and I'll get to those in the latter half of this video. But now let me speak very briefly about each of these works again, and how they might be seen to be consistent in Varda's filmography as a whole. So the first film is UNCLE YANCO, and this is a short work, and this is in essence a kind of portrait or documentary-like presentation, although there are obvious aspects of the playful, cinematic, almost fiction-like artistry of Varda, which is made bare and made quite evident. So we see her playing with various forms and styles, and she is using these, or she's employing these, to tell this story of this man who is a relation of Varda, the UNCLE YANCO in question. And we see not just his life and also what he does and what he seems to represent. We also see interactions between him and Agnes Varda. We also hear his point of view as to what his life philosophy is as an artist. And also we get the sense of Agnes Varda and how she views this nature of getting in touch with one's roots and one's family roots. Also an opportunity to discuss the importance of art in her life and how there was this familial connection to this artist, and very eccentric and lovable personality that is UNCLE YANCO. And also we see Agnes Varda and her interactions with this particular part of the world, this community. And after she relocated for a time in her life in the 60s to California, one of the works that was made by her was this work, UNCLE YANCO. And so it's an interesting way in which she is identifying and associating with the environment around her at the time, while also exploring her roots and her family connections, while also exploring the role of art in her life, and as expressed in the words of the UNCLE YANCO in question. So in all of these ways, I would suggest that UNCLE YANCO is a work that is very consistent in Varda's filmography. As I say, she is using the art form of cinema to speak a little bit about herself, here namely her family, also her concerns and desires and ambitions as an artist, and also the way that she expresses this is, as I indicated earlier, a playful one. The use of a documentary-like approach to interviews on the one hand versus the very evidently applied nature of the and I mean this positively, the artifice of cinema, and how that plays into the presentation of information, the presentation of language and image, and also the way that Varda herself is wholly integrated into this cinematic world that she's presenting. So it's a further, I think, illustration of where Varda equals cinema, which is, I think, the grand thesis, if you will, of this Criterion set. So it's a very essential work, very tender and lovable work from Varda during this time. And let me say that as far as the supplements go with regard to UNCLE YANCO, we get an introduction from Agnes Varda herself from 2007. It's approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds, so it's very brief, but she goes into some detail about the circumstances that arose with respect to her being able to find and locate UNCLE YANCO while being here in this part of the world, and also the feelings that she had vis-a-vis her own immediate family, and how meeting UNCLE YANCO and discovering the type of person that he was, how that seems to enable her to cast some more reflections on her own life in terms of her family and as an artist. So as with all the other intros from Varda, this one should not be missed, and it's well worth the time. The next film that is discussed, or that features on Program 6, is the film Black Panthers. And this is described as being a film from 1970, although we understand that it was made in the year 1968. And it's approximately 30 minutes. And this is a very interesting film because it is, I think it can be described as being a more straightforward type of documentary, in that Agnes Varda uses her camera and she is capturing a moment in time during this period in the late 1960s, and specifically the Black Panthers and portions of the African American community in California were protesting and were giving voice to this line of protest and peaceful protest with respect to Huey P. Newton and the imprisonment of Newton during this time. And so this is in the air, and it's described also in the book which accompanies the Varda set here. So this is the situation in which Varda uses her camera and goes into this particular neighborhood and sees a community, a living community that is coming together during this time that is, I think, very politically charged, but also very important. Very, very important in terms of a universal sense of identity and also safety, and also the sense of being. And that is, I think, at the heart of what Varda is trying to capture with her camera. And she does so by showing us the scene of this gathering, if you will, in this community which has a lot of very interesting people and individuals. And then Varda takes this and uses her camera and goes and talks to individuals and gets their thoughts about the nature of the movement, the nature of the political processes and protest, and the acts of peaceful protest, and the need and necessity for that kind of political and public action, as well as the human and intimate nature by which the people that she interviews speak about the times and their feelings and thoughts and emotions and reactions. And so it can be said to be, on the one hand, a quote-unquote straightforward documentary, but it is also very much a part of a time and place and moment. And what we have seen from Varda thus far in our exploration of this set is that she is also very keenly aware of the importance of place and time and moment, and the people associated with such place and time and moment, and whether they be the camera pointing to the people in the streets of Paris, or whether her camera is in California capturing this moment in terms of Black Panthers. In any event, this is, I think, a universal aspect of Varda's cinema and documentary sensibility. And she is using that sensibility on full display in a very loving and earnest portrait that we find here in Black Panthers. And so this is, as I say, described as being from 1968, although according to the materials found in the book, it wasn't released until 1970, thus leading to the description by the set here of the film being from 1970. I think we also have a film that seems to be very much of a prescient film that can be said to be very relevant in terms of the nature of the protest as well, and the notions of police brutality and excessive force, and how communities try to deal with these kinds of issues that occur, and how to therefore confront and fix such issues. And so I think there is something of a feel of the film that can be said to be very much part of its time, but also it might be said to be universal and can speak to many generations as well. So that is the film Black Panthers. And with that, we have associated with the film on program 6 disc, we have the supplement, which is another great introduction from Agnès Varda herself from 2007, and this is another brief one, about 1 minute and 20 to 30 seconds. But it's very enlightening and informative, because she makes some really great and profound points that are so that are so wonderfully descriptive. And she says at one point that her camera and her filmmaking was like it was bearing witness to this moment of history, and that moment of history was defined by these people and this community and their feelings and actions and their bonding with and among each other, and their willingness to share those feelings and emotions and responses to Varda and her camera. So I love that description that she gives about bearing witness. So that is one example of why I think that's another great way to experience this, is through the introductions. So this is the one from 2007 from Agnès Varda. But that's not all, because the next film that follows in this program 6 is the film from 1969, and this is a feature-length film, so it's almost 2 hours. It is called Lions, Love, and Lies. And what an interesting, almost hyper-poetic type of portrait that we get from Varda about Hollywood and Los Angeles and the film scene and the film actor scene and the 60s feel and this almost hippie generation-like way of living combined with the Hollywood sensibilities of acting and making movies in Hollywood, as well as the convergence with a reality that is presented in perhaps what might be said to be a somewhat skewed way or a filtered way through the medium of television, and combined with that, the way that politics converges or perhaps even clashes or collides with such worlds, as expressed in the very important year in terms of American politics, 1968, and specifically the very shocking moment of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. So this is all part of the experience or the presentation that we see by Varda in Lions, Love, and Lies. And so what we get from this is we get an interesting story of Hollywood types, actors, or people in the community, and they're living together, a woman and two men, in this free love generation type of situation. And so they seem to also inhabit a world that is a combination of reality and artifice. So there is much made about this world being a world that is based in large part on the artifice and the artificial. Bits of furniture seem to suggest this, the real and the fake, but how both seem to be celebrated at the same time, and how that is, in a very interesting way, a wonderful encapsulation of the type of community that is being distilled in this film through the portrait of these actors. And we have also the wonderful mix or blending or merging between the truth or reality and also fiction. Because on the one hand, we have this seemingly fictionalized portrait of these three actors played by Ragni and Rado and Viva. And also we have the appearance of Shirley Clark and also others, and also Varda herself. So it seems on the one hand, however, to be a film that is, while touching on a story that is maybe a fictional account of actors and their interactions with other artists, there are very obvious cross-sections with quote-unquote reality and real figures. And the people who appear in this also have this integral connection, cultural connection with the society at the times, and Viva and Andy Warhol and Rado and Ragni, and of course with the musical Hair and others, and then Shirley Clark and others, and then Varda herself. And so we get this wonderful cross-section, if you will, of the blending of truth and fiction. And it comes alive in this very poignant and also very funny and very a very almost documentary-like way. And also there are moments where the film points the camera or points the attention to itself. And so there is another way that this film acts as a meta type of exploration of this way of living in society and the Hollywood filmmaking machine, and how that either promotes or destroys the artistic instinct that is on display, as represented by Shirley Clark and also by Agnes Varda herself, and what comments, therefore, the filmmaker is making in that regard. So this is very much a film that I think is about Hollywood, or aims or endeavors to be about Hollywood and the Hollywood lifestyle. And at the same time, it is also about the absorption of information through television, and so it becomes a very important thing or a character in and of itself, and also the idea of symbols and representations that we see throughout this particular environment and what they suggest to these characters, and how certain political events seem to be unfolding, maybe outside this world, but also in a way that is very much integral and very linked inextricably to the world and the effects that it has going forward. And as I say, the film focuses in on certain crises, certain personal crises that are experienced by some of the characters portrayed, but also political crises and terrible, tragic events in the political world, again with respect to or in reference to the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and how that seems to be either informing the world that Varda is portraying, or is otherwise wholly separate from the world that Varda is portraying. And I think it is up to us as the viewers to try to make a distinction or make an interpretation of that. And we therefore have, I think, these primary components combining in this film, and thus we have what could be said to be the inspiration for the title, Lions, Love, and Lies. And speaking of which, I'd like to then point to the supplements that are included with respect to this film, because we have the introduction from Agnes Varda, 2014. It's approximately 2 minutes and 20 seconds, but here she is talking about the significance of the title and how it's about lions, is maybe a reference to the look or the hair, and that might be a signifier representation of this generation of youth at the time, as represented by the actors and the characters of the film. And love seems to be very much part of that. The idea of love is expressed in this film, whether it is a true genuine emotion or whether it is an ephemeral, almost one based on artifice. It's up to us as viewers to determine, but that's another component. And then the lies, which Varda seems to associate with the notion of television, and I think more generally speaking, the way that information is transmitted and understood by the public, and how that is portrayed in this film. And she makes a great point about the idea of the treatment of things that are fake as though they were real. And I think that is very profound. And I don't think it's said in jest, or I don't think it's said in a negative connotation, but it is said in a way that speaks to a certain truth about the nature of artifice and the nature of blending these things with the real, and how that affects our overall perceptions of the world. So this and other comments are what she makes in this great introduction. Again, it should not be missed. And then also there is a second supplement associated with this film, which is called Viva Varda. And this is a great one because this is a piece from 1970, and it's from for French television. And this has this has a great interview, or it's a discussion, if you will, with Varda and Viva, and it is in French, and so we see Varda and Viva speaking in French, and Viva, along the way, she makes some comments about what this word means in French, or that sort of thing. And so it's very charming. It's also very down to earth. Varda is very frank about working with Viva, and also Viva is very frank about working with Varda, and actually they're very complementary. Viva talks about how Varda is this consummate artist, and she has this great source of energy, whereas Viva, according to herself, she says that she has a very limited amount of energy in which she can perform and act. And so they also have take the opportunity to talk about the nature of stardom and the nature of fame, and how that plays into contemporary society and contemporary entertainment, as well as and that component is, I think, very much at play in a film like Lions, Love, and Lies. And so it's really a great short clip featuring the two of them at the time. So that is something that you should check out, very much so. It's really wonderful to see. The next film in Program 6 is the film from 1981. That's how it's described in the set. And it's called MUR MURS. And the phrase refers to the mural paintings that can be found on various architectural structures and walls throughout the city of Los Angeles at the time. This is really interesting because what Varda decided to do was she decided to make this film again about the place and time, this place Los Angeles, and she decided to focus in on these works of art that you could find outside, and they are sometimes very large and very prominent and really intricate in terms of their artistic integrity and beauty. She then focused in on the art itself, how it seemed to be integrated or connected with the environment around it, and also focusing in on the artists themselves, hearing from their point of view as to their approach, the idea behind the art, their views on capturing human figures in the artworks. Sometimes they're very large and very exaggerated, but that is due to a certain perspective or philosophy of art that these artists express. And along the way, we get another set of very clever situations that play with the notion of art subject and artist and art and community, and art and society, and art and environment, and art and the person, while speaking to these very interesting themes and notions associated with with Los Angeles and the communities that are in Los Angeles. So this is another instance of Varda working with subject matter where she is able to talk about a time and a place and talk with people, real-life people, in this documentary-like approach to cinema. But also she tries to present it in very clever ways that is also using the craft of cinema in a poetic manner. But ultimately she's always interested in presenting this earnest, good faith portrait of these people and the community. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we get in this work, MUR MURS. We get a very sensitive and very artistic presentation of these discussions, and it's done in that wonderful Varda style. And I think there's a great range as well. These discussions of art range from the very intimately personal to very much part of a fabric that can be said to be political. It also could be varying forms of expression that touch upon the political in terms of protest or in terms of the expression of pain in certain pockets of community in Los Angeles, and how to express that pain, how to express anger or frustration, or how to express notions of peace and love, or other types of notions, religious aspects, the human visage, the human body, real life people, or other types of representations. So it's all here, and therefore it's all meant to portray the sense of varying places of a community, varying sub-communities, but also the place as a whole. And as we've seen with Varda's films, she is concerned with looking at the intimate and looking at how places affect people, also how people affect places, and that the stories from people are very important. And also Varda is, as we know, very much concerned with the artistic expression. And this is a film that is very much one about the expression through art, front and center, and it's beautiful for that fact, and many others. So this is the film MUR MURS. And with MUR MURS, we have a number of supplements. The first is an intro from 2014. This is very short, it's less than a minute, and it actually refers to the relationship between the film MUR MURS and the film Documentaire, and I'll get to that in a moment. And then there is another supplement which is called Two Street Artists, and this is approximately 5 minutes, and this is focusing in on two street artists in Paris, and they are Jérôme Ménager and Miss Tick. And this is really interesting because this is actually talking to the artists and their lives as artists drawing these murals on the street. and their interactions with people and their anecdotes about interactions with shopkeepers and the law, and also their interactions with the community presently. So, and they're really famous for it, and so their art leaves this legacy that is, and it seems to be argued inherently in the film that this legacy is very much part of the identity of the city itself. So, very interesting stuff. Again, 5 minutes, and well worth checking out. And then to round out the supplements, we have the trailer to the film, MUR MURS. And then the final film that is part of this program 6 is the film Documentaire, and this is from 1981. And this is so interesting because we have, on the one hand, links with the film MUR MURS in terms of the focusing in on particular shots of particular street or wall murals in the city. And also we have participants in one film also being participants in this film, which is also a very interesting link. In particular, Sabine Mamou, who was a part of the crew on MUR MURS, now is acting in the film Documentaire as the main character. And we also have Agnès Varda's son Mathieu also playing a very key role in this film Documentaire, which is in essence about a mother-child relationship set against the backdrop of a particular community here. And explorations therefore this gives room for explorations about the person and self vis-a-vis the community that he or she finds oneself in. How the people in that community seem to be part of the fabric of one's identity. So this is, I think, very much keyed into the notion that Varda seems to be focusing in on, the importance of people and place and time and the moment, and this seems to be capturing that. This is also, as I say, very playful because it seems to be drawing the line between what is real and what isn't, based, I think, almost immediately by the fact that, as I say, there are these connections with this film and MUR MURS, thus drawing attention to the fact that this is a film, and I think it's a very purposeful one, a purposeful way of drawing attention to that, which is, again, very brilliant on the part of Varda as an artist. It's also very much an intimate portrait of femininity, of one's self and one's body, and also explorations of relationships in a very, I think, nuanced and subtle way. And that is also related to one's sexuality and how that figures into how one identifies, and how one's identity is essentially made, forged, or reinforced in terms of also one's life and one's existence in this community that is being depicted. So I think we have here also very, very tender and intimate and emotional cores that are very consistent with Varda's filmography and her body of work, because we have this focus on the body and how it relates to identity and self. And we also have the focus on parents and children, and so this need, this desire, and the want to express this very tender and very important relationship in this particular set of characters. But it's also very important, as we know, in the real life of Agnès Varda herself, and I think that's even made more apparent by the inclusion of her son Mathieu in this film. And that is also another way to say that this is another expression of the thesis, which is Varda equals her cinema, or she is her films. In other words, she is really expressing a part of herself in the body of work that she makes here, including this film Documentaire, whether that is a straightforward depiction of herself or whether it is a playful wink at the audience type of poetic gesture type of cinema. I think we get both tones of that approach in this film. And in fact, you look at the title itself, Documentaire. The word menteur, I understand, is the French for lies or liar, and then docu, of course, is suggestive of documentary. And so there is this interesting line already being generated between what is real and what isn't, and there is a merging of the two. But rather than create this stark difference, it is, in other words, or another way to see it, that stark difference is not there, but what is there is the organic unity between these two. And I think that organic unity is suggestive of a kind of truth or expression of who Varda really is as a human being. And so Documentaire is really another fascinating work. Again, it's directly related to MUR MURS, so there are direct links to other Varda works. There are also some really strong thematic links, as I was trying to suggest just a moment ago. And also it operates really well in its own right as a film and exploration of these characters in this community that was very important to Varda herself during this time. So this is the film Documentaire. And I should point out that there is no supplement that is specific to Documentaire, at least as far as I can find it on this disc. But as I mentioned before, there is the very brief introduction given by Varda in respect of the film MUR MURS. And in that introduction, there is comment on the relationship between MUR MURS and Documentaire. So perhaps we can say that that supplement with MUR MURS can also be a supplement related to Documentaire. In any event, that is the film that is part of the collection of films that is found on Program 6 in California. Okay, my friends, so that's it for now. And so until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Thank you so much, as always, for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Stay strong, stay safe, and cheers.